to infrastructure, parenting, extended family, and all of those things in the process of saving our sons and daughters, as opposed to just not how do we see them go to jail, how do we not see them get killed by the police, how do we not see them kill each other? Because if we do that, we're missing an opportunity here to ensure that we're building whole young people.
Yeah, Jeff. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And I want to bring you greetings on behalf of your Attorney General, Loretta Lynch. Give it up. I just want to take a point of personal privilege to let you know, today she was in Jessup, Maryland, making a groundbreaking announcement that the Department of Justice and the Department of Education have joined together to reverse a ban on Pell Grants for those who are incarcerated. This is a huge announcement. There's been a 20-year ban on those who are incarcerated from receiving federal aid to continue their education. I think it's striking that when the numbers are about 67% of those who are released without supportive services return within a matter of years, only 4% of those who pursue college education from behind the walls return. So just want to make that note. But Jeff, you make a powerful point. I have a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old. And one of the initiatives I'm most proud of working on is the President's Responsible Fatherhood and Mentoring Initiative. And we know that government can do a lot and has a responsibility, but ultimately families, parents, and caring adults play the most important role in the future of children. So we work, we work as part of an interagency initiative, part of the My Brother's Keeper initiative, with folks from education and housing and health and human services to find opportunities to empower parents, empower educators to support young people. And the last thing we want to see is people come in contact with the justice system. But if they do, we want to make sure our system is fair, equitable, and creates pathways forward.
Thank you so much. Clay, let me come to you, because I think that when we think about athletes, a lot of times we're thinking about awards, we're thinking about acclaim, we're thinking about money, we're thinking about brand, but I don't hear us having the kind of conversations about the fact that athletics in particular helps create leadership. And how do you connect leadership, regardless of where you get it, with your ability to navigate some of the challenges that our young people face, regardless of what communities they come from? And how do you think we can target new ways of developing leadership that often in our communities we don't give enough credibility to?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. When I was invited, I wasn't quite sure what you guys wanted to hear from me, so I was a little nervous as to what my questions might be. But listen, I think as athletes, we understand that we have an important role to play in society. And I think there's a lot of young kids, and not just young kids, but a lot of adults that look at what we do and they idolize that and they say, that's what I want to be. And so when I look at athletes and I wonder how we can be better examples of life and how you're supposed to handle things, I look at the way we respond to things as what people most take home. And so it's easy to see somebody on the podium and go, oh, that's really cool and that's great. But what's more important is how are those people responding to everyday situations? How are they responding to things like losses? How are they responding to injury? How are they responding to things that just come up out of the ordinary that they didn't plan on? How are they responding within the family unit when you see them bring their kids up on stage? Or do they have 15 girlfriends with 30 different kids? And I think we can do a better job of being better examples of what it's like to be a responsible, for me, young man in a community that's productive, that's giving back, and that cares about more than just winning. And I think that's where we lose a lot of our athletes.
Well, and absolutely, please. But let's dive in a little bit there, because I think that we're in a society where we've got kids that are in AAU programs from the time they're 7 and 8 years old. And from the time they're 7 and 8 years old, they're told when, here's what you can do, here's a pathway to the NBA. At 12 years old, you're being ranked as number 1, 2, or 3 in the country. And the entire investment in them is not about character. It's not about who you can be as a man or a woman. It's about how can you win and how can you get mama and daddy paid. Not everybody, but enough of the time.
No, I agree. I think it's really important for people to understand when you start to get successful in sports. For example, my personal experience was at a very young age, 20 years old or whatever it was. I was sitting down with marketers, and my marketers were saying, listen, you need to figure out who you want to be. Do you want to be Brian Clay the Christian, or do you want to be Brian Clay the world's greatest athlete? And you need to choose a path because those two paths look very different. And at the time, I was naive enough, I was just on fire with my faith, and I thought, I can be Brian Clay the Christian, and I can still get all the stuff that I want to get from being Brian Clay the world's greatest athlete. And I didn't know enough to know that there really was going to be a difference between those two paths. And so I think, what we have to do is we have to start getting a hold of our young people, and we have to start teaching them these values and start to direct them. Like you said, you've got all these coaches and people in their life that are like, just go out and win, just go out and win. But nobody ever talks to the people after they just go out and win. Nobody ever goes up and asks those guys how life is after they've gone out and win. I was told during my career, if you just win, everything will get better. Everything that you want, you'll get it. The problem is I went out and I just won, and then I just won again, and I just won again, and I just won again. And one day I woke up and I sat there with my gold medal on my nightstand in Beijing, and I remember sitting there looking out the window thinking, this is it? Like, nobody cares. The world was still going, everybody was still doing their own thing. And it doesn't matter. People are going to tell you to just win, just win, just win. What I always tell my athletes is, do you know how many gold medalists I know that are doing nothing with their lives now, that have just completely fallen off? And I think if more kids knew that story, if more kids knew what happens when you just go out and win, that's not what they would want.
Thank you so much for that. Jonathan, there is a lot, obviously, that we can discuss as we talk about this notion of saving our sons and daughters. But I think many of us are looking in horror at the news and YouTube on a daily basis, watching people who are trying to obey the law. And even in the process of obeying the law, they find themselves brutalized, they find themselves killed, they find themselves in prison. So as an attorney, how do we have this balanced conversation between teaching our babies what the law is and teaching them how to get home?
But I think it's a very unfortunate question. And we have to ask ourselves that. We have to say, how can we have a conversation about the law and what our rights are and what our civil liberties are, while at the same time having a very real conversation about you come home tonight and don't get yourself killed. This is the reality of America in 2015. This was the reality of America in 2010, 2005, 2000, 1999, 1995, 1960, 1950, 1920. This has been the reality of America for the last couple centuries. And it's only just now coming to light because of cell phone cameras. So this has been happening, it's been going on. And so you have to have that unfortunate conversation. You have to have that be safe conversation, okay? But you also have the conversation about here is how things really work. Here is how things really change, okay? This is the system. I decided a long time ago, I grew up dirt poor in rural Pennsylvania. I decided a long time ago, I'm not gonna beat my head against the system and say it's not fair. Oh, the system's not fair, the system's not right, it shouldn't be that way. Forget that, this is the system. I'm gonna play in the system, okay? This is the system. How do you change things? What do people listen to? People listen to litigation and money. That is what people listen to. And as part of the national discourse, we have to call out the people on the other side for what they are, which is radical, radical. We're saying, we simply want our children to be able to walk down the street, drive down the road, not be accosted, not be killed, not be illegally searched and seized. Those are basic principles of the American democracy. And anybody who stands against that is a tyrant who needs to be called out for what they are. So we need to amp up the discourse, Call the people out on the other side for what they are, and we need to hit people where it hurts and how it hurts, which is litigation and money. And the way you do that is you come together. I want to see panels of civilians in every city throughout America, sit down, have a little think tank round table group, bring in some lawyers, bring in some big firm lawyers. I used to work for David Boyce and Boyce Schiller. Bring me in, I sit down and say, okay, here's the issue. Let's see how we're going to address this. Let's see how we're going to get a civilian oversight board. Let's see how we're going to get a civilian task force. Let's see how we're going to see reforms passed. That's how it works. You hit people where it hurts, litigation and money.
How many high school students are in here? I was looking for a verbal response. Anybody in high school make some noise? Any freshmen in here? God bless you. God bless you. Any sophomores? Any juniors? Any seniors in the house? We have our own high school senior on the panel, and I wanted her to go last because I think that her voice is the most important on the panel. And I want to know from you, as you hear adults talk about young people, and as you hear adults talking about how to save your generation, what are we not hearing from you? What is it that we need to know that we don't know? And how can we better work with young people versus telling young people what we think they need to do? Versus, I think as Light said, listening to what you all are saying to figure out how we help you do what you know how to do.
Hi everybody. I feel like you have to listen to us and be aware of our surroundings, because it's completely different from when they lived. We're like, now the technology is so advanced, we can do so much with it. And I feel like in our surroundings, like we can record just a fight so quick and it'll be on Twitter like in a few seconds. And we're not being heard because we're not like, they aren't listening to us and knowing what we're doing, and they're not like.
Take your time. Take your time.
I feel they don't know how it's so hard actually being able to fit in, especially how you're a minority. We face so many challenges in high school, especially going through puberty in middle school and then having to transform to high school. It's a big transformation, and then adults aren't making it easier when we're just telling them a simple fact that we want to do something like in high school, for example. There'll be times when we'll tell them something, let's say if someone's bullying, and they'll be, oh, it's fine, it was just a pinch. And how can we be heard? I feel actually individually talking to us and listening most of all, because I feel that they listen, but they still have their opinion and how they're living, and they take in mind of how their lifestyle is, but they don't try to fit in our shoes and put themselves in our situations.
Eugene, I want you to chime in, because I think one of the things that, as a parent, that's often difficult is, how do I have empathy for how my child feels about something that I think they're totally wrong about? And in the community, many of us who work with young people are constantly hearing young people say things that we either vehemently oppose, and we don't even understand where they are, or are never open-minded enough to really hear what's underneath that. How do you find doing that as a father, number one? And then how, as a community, can you give one or two recommendations of how we do that institutionally?
Yeah, it's challenging. My son is one of those AAU ball players, and I'm guilty of him telling you're going to do this just because I said you're going to do it. And but you know, one of the things that's interesting about this kind of generational divide that we see is, as I go out throughout the country, we oftentimes meet with mayors, chiefs of police, senior pastors, and a lot of times folks antidote for a lot of violence we see in the communities is just have these young brothers pull up their pants. As if they pull up their pants, everything will go away. And clearly that's an oversimplified viewpoint. And I think it's really important that we have skilled practitioners that understand youth culture, that can empower them, and the youth themselves can be, we can groom them to take our jobs, quite frankly. If you're not grooming a young person to take your job and empowering them, you're not doing your job effectively.
Light, I want to come to you, because I think as you talk about that grooming piece, I see more young women who are friends of my daughter or young people that I'm seeing around the country that are dying not because they're getting shot in the street, but they're dying because they're losing their souls and their identity in the process of becoming young women. And so they are either surrounded by the wrong image, by the wrong circle, by the wrong mentorship. How do we need to reclaim our babies in a way that we are There was a brother who came to me, he was getting ready to have a daughter. And he said, Jeff, what's the best advice that you can give me about having a daughter? And I said, the best thing that I can tell you to do is to understand that you have to be a source of safety. How do you ensure that your baby, when she hears your voice, feels safe? That when your presence is there, feels safe? Not just, did you pay the rent or did you buy groceries? But as daddy, when I come in daddy's presence, I know there is security and safety and I can be myself in front of daddy. But how do we do that communally? In a way where there are young women that are dealing with all kinds of issues and all kinds of backgrounds that really makes a difference.
I know the work that we do with Hip Hop Sisters and now together with Honey Shine is the intention of doing just that, being able to mentor young girls. But I think the thing that I would say most is I imagine we have a lot of like-minded high school individuals here who are looking to further their education. Is anybody furthering their education? Moving on? Well, I think it's about holding one another accountable. You know, some of us are blessed with parents who know right from wrong and will help you on your journey. However, there are some of us who don't have that luxury. And so we have to create our families around us. So if you have a friend who told you that they are looking forward to being or becoming a doctor, then you need to hold that friend accountable. And if you see your friend doing something that doesn't line up with where it is they say they want to be, that you give them a little nudge on the shoulder and say, hey, you said you wanted this. It's all about the surroundings of an individual. It's all about listening, but know the company that you keep, because you are that person, really. And I think for a long time, I took it lightly that I'm an only child. I don't need anybody. I can do it all myself. I can do that, and the third. But it wasn't until I became an honorary member of Sigma Gamma Rho that I understood what sisterhood is. And brothers too. You should have a brotherhood. I know you, Jeff, you have a prayer line that people from all over call in, and specifically men, which I think is so admirable. Whenever I see, let me tell you, I am such a crybaby. Whenever I see a man feel an emotion, like I'm crying and watching the game, you know, because you're achieving such greatness with everything around you that says you're not, that you can't, that you won't, and you'll never be anything more than just there. And so for young girls, young boys here today, young men, young women, on your journey, just keep your slate clean, ethically. Be good. Do the right thing. You know what the right thing is. Do that. Listen. Don't be afraid to listen and take that advice so you don't have to go through the same pitfalls. And you, sir, there is a total difference. You can know the law back and forth, what your rights are, but do you want to make it home? Do you want to anger someone because you know what you know? You don't always have to say what it is that you know, especially when you want to live to see another day.
Amen. Thank you so much. Before we come to the audience, and I want to come to you immediately, David, I want you to come in on this and answer a similar question because, Light's right, we do